when the security guard at the Carlton looked me up and down, then scanned his clipboard with a flat expression. I already knew how this night would begin. "Catering staff this way," he said, jerking his thumb toward the service elevator like I was some underpaid waiter balancing shrimp skewers instead of a man wearing a Cartier timepiece worth more than his car. I didn't flinch. I nodded, stepped past him, and took 2 quiet strides before pausing near the heavy double doors that stood slightly ajar. That's when I heard her, Bethany, my wife's sister. Her voice floated out smooth and sparkling like champagne, but sharpened with cruelty. "Don't worry," she said with a chuckle laced in venom. "I've seated Rachel's embarrassing husband in the kitchen where no one will see him." There it was, the casual cruelty, the cut meant to humiliate. They assumed I hadn't heard, assumed I wouldn't respond, that I'd play the fool like always. But they were wrong. I decided then not to interrupt their little celebration. Not yet. After all, you don't build a billion-dollar empire by reacting too soon. I knew how to wait, how to let things simmer until the timing was exquisite. I met Rachel a decade ago, long before the power, before the mergers and acquisitions, before I became a man with leverage. Back then, I was just an ambitious outsider with rough edges and relentless drive. She was a glossy daughter of legacy, old money, polished lineage, all pearls and practiced smiles. She told me she loved that I was different, that I had fire, vision. Maybe she did once. But money changes people. It doesn't just corrupt. It reveals. It sharpens teeth and blurs loyalty. Bethany always hated me. Said I was too quiet, too calculating, too working class, until I wasn't. Then I became a different problem. New money and tailored Tom Ford, a liability at garden parties where people sipped privilege and whispered in codes. Still, I played nice, smiled through their barbs disguised as questions, brought expensive wine to their flavorless dinner parties, let them pretend I didn't know how many digits sat in their trust funds. I let Rachel drag me into their world. Weekends in Aspen, sterile engagement parties, endless social charades, and I played along. But I kept notes, not out of spite, out of instinct. 3 months ago, I caught the first real crack. I came home early from a meeting. She didn't hear me enter. I stood quietly in the hallway, listening as she spoke into phone, annoyed, dismissive. No, he won't notice. He's too obsessed with work to care where the money's going. She ended the call the moment she saw me, smiled, asked if I wanted dinner. I told her I'd already eaten. That night, I started tracing, and what I found was rot buried beneath layers of silk. Accounts moved, shares restructured, equity quietly siphoned into shell companies with her name tucked behind dummy boards. The broker? Bethany's fiancé, Jeremy. They weren't stealing in chunks. They were carving pieces from my empire, slowly and strategically. It wasn't marriage. It was infiltration. So I stopped being her husband and became the architect of her collapse. I didn't announce my move. I began with silence, tightened my inner circle, locked the board, restructured authority, and then I started buying in, not stocks, not companies. I bought into Bethany's wedding. The Carlton? I quietly acquired 40% of the property. The event planner? Now on my payroll. The wine served that evening? From my vineyard. Bottles relabeled to appear generic. Each cork embedded with a discreet microchip. The staff? Private intelligence professionals in server uniforms. Each one trained to observe, record, document. Because this wasn't just a wedding. It was evidence collection. I let them seat me in the kitchen. White tile, humming fridges, a folding chair beside the industrial sink. I sat there quietly, hands folded in my lap, while they toasted in the ballroom. I listened to my wife's laugh, the fake kind she developed over the last year, brittle and hollow. I waited. 35 minutes in, Bethany's voice came crackling to the speaker system. Her mic accidentally left live. Honestly, if I were Rachel, I would have just divorced him years ago. But hey, she gets half when this all blows up. The room froze. She didn't know, but I did. I made sure that mic stayed hot. I stood up and walked calmly out of the kitchen. This time, no one tried to stop me. The grand ballroom doors parted like velvet curtains at a theater. Faces turned. Flutes paused midair. Rachel stared at me like she'd just seen the ghost of mistake. Bethany went white. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, voice even, steady, forgive the interruption. There's been a slight change in tonight's program. I pulled a small remote from my pocket. Behind me, the towering video wall, meant to showcase engagement photos, flickered to life. Bank statements, wire transfers, logged emails, voicemails, recordings, her voice, his name, their plan. For 7 full minutes, the room sat in stunned silence, watching their polished lives unravel frame by frame. When it ended, I turned to Rachel. You once said you married me for my mind. I told her, you should have remembered how it works. She tried to speak. Nothing came. Bethany lunged toward the DJ booth, aiming for the laptop, but 2 of my caterers intercepted her mid-step. Jeremy had already vanished, slipped out through a side door like the coward he was. The fallout was immediate and clean. My lawyers moved before the last guest had even left. Legal notices delivered. Accounts frozen. Trusts locked. Assets seized. Rachel stood in the middle of the room, mascara streaked across her face like a war mask. You ruined everything, she hissed. No, I replied quietly. You did. I just documented it. I never raised my voice. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, the tabloids broke the story. The scandal spread like fire. Someone leaked it. Not me, but I didn't stop it either. Bethany's wedding was canceled. Jeremy resurfaced briefly in the Caymans before disappearing again. Rachel filed for divorce. Too late. Our prenup had a clause: infidelity, collusion, financial sabotage. Her claim was nullified. She walked away with nothing. I kept the house, the shares, the dogs. Now I sit in silence most nights, peaceful, unbothered. They underestimated me because I didn't crave cameras, didn't waste money on toys, didn't bark in boardrooms. I watched. I waited. I handed them the rope, and they tied their own noose. Funny thing is, I never wanted revenge. I wanted respect. But when they took that from me, I took everything else. And I've never slept better.